Hi there.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
All right. So, obviously, sound good. It looks good with the background. Do you want to try to go ahead and share your screen?
Sure. Let's see how that works. It's saying host disabled participant screen sharing.
All right, hang on. So that's why we practice.
How are you, Gail? I said Stephanie. I'm like, you're not Stephanie.
I don't know why that says Stephanie. It's probably because we're in the practice screen.
Got it.
I
You
need to
doing
make sure.
okay?
I'm sorry.
You doing all right today?
I'm doing okay today. I hope I do you justice today. I've had a
Oh,
lot
come
going
on,
on,
Gail.
and I'm like, oh my gosh, don't let me stumble through any of this stuff.
Oh no. I mean, it'll be great. It'll be a great conversation. Yeah,
I'm excited. I can't wait to see how many people
I
actually
know.
participate. So
It's cool.
I've
So,
had women reaching out saying, can I forward it to such and such? I'm like, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
so Gail, I just renamed you. So,
Oh, that's
Okay.
yep. So we should be good there. So I guess from our end, and yep, Nora's sharing.
let me how do I do okay, that's better.
Yep,
Sorry. There.
there you go. So we'll start. I have a little intro movie that'll just play while people are joining. And usually, what we do is we go ahead. Hey, Stephanie and Alex, how are you guys doing? Good.
Doing
So
good.
I'm going to close this over too, so you don't hear all the background. So what we usually do is we go live 15 minutes before, and I'll have a video looping. Okay, but we can talk through if we want to delay that. Ultimately, the video will loop till about a minute after the top of the hour, so people are joining. And then once that video is over, in this case, then we go right to Gail. So Gail, when we see you on screen, when you see yourself, you're good to go.
Okay.
And then, so just reading over everything. So we go with Gail, and then we go with Nora, and then Nora, you'll present your own slides like we just did. Then the conversation. So I know we had said in the notes that we were going to do side by side. Is that what we want to do, or do we want to let Zoom just kind of go with it, whoever's talking?
I like side by side. What do you
Yep.
think, Gail?
Yeah, I like side by side.
So
I
it'll,
just don't I think it's gonna be the two of us and just the two of us talking, so I think it'll give people a little less whiplash.
Yeah.
so it'll look like that.
That looks great.
That looks okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Can we do side by side?
This is how side by side will look. Do you see it on your screen?
Maybe I need to expand my screen. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. So if that looks good, then that's what we can do. I'm going to remove that spotlight. And then spotlight here. Okay. So we are going to have overflow to YouTube. So if they join and there's no more room on the webinar, they'll have a link that can take them right to YouTube. I've got captioning is on. Yep, captioning is on. We're recording it, obviously. If they can't chat, we can chat to them. And I think that was all of my action points, with the exception of one thing. Stephanie, I have the intro slide and their two bio slides, and there was talk of a slide at the end. Nope? Okay. So then what we'll do is at the end, when we're wrapping, I'll just go back to that intro movie again. So it'll just play that
Perfect.
through. And that actually, I'll start that so you can see what it would look like. This is what I'll be playing as we go into it, and it just loops through those three slides over and over again. That sound good?
Yep.
Stop that.
BJ, I just wanted to confirm that like Stephanie and I won't be visible to participants at all. Is that right?
So you are going to be visible if you have your camera on, just along the top. And I'll
Okay,
turn
so I'll
mine
just
too.
okay, I'll do the same.
Mhm.
All
And
right.
so, yeah, I'm in here twice, obviously. One I'm managing, the other one's actually playing everything over here to my left. Yes, so exactly, Nora. Right. If you chat to everyone, it goes to everybody on the webinar. But if you just chat to hosts and panelists, then it would come just to this group. And I sent my cell phone
Your
number,
cell phone. Yeah,
and I'll put that here in this chat too.
cool.
So we have that. And I think that is everything then. And what I'll do, Gail, is
Yes.
I will count you down.
Okay.
Okay, so you'll have an idea. So you're not just going to show up on the screen. You'll know you're going to show up on the screen. I'll count you down to as far as 15 seconds. And then after that, once you show up, you can go ahead and start talking.
Okay. All right. That's awesome. So Nora, your last chart, are you going to have the link for the new report?
I am going to have it. And I updated it. Here, I'll show you real quick. I updated it. It no longer has the QR code because that was not active.
Okay.
But I put 2 links. I put where they can download the full report, www.com, and then another site which includes related articles and research from us in case that's interesting. And when the new one's available this fall, it'll be at this same website. So that we don't get the cool QR code, but the link works.
Stephanie.
Yes.
I know this is a crazy question. Is this lipstick okay, or do I need some?
Oh, no, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's just enough. I was actually noticing it earlier. I'm like, I got to put something on mine, even though I'm not on camera, but like you inspired me.
Okay. So we'll look.
Good reminder. Gail, my one other thought, just for you, as we'll move through the questions, I guess maybe you can be time cop to like jump around or skip some if we're running late.
Yeah, I tell you one that I really want to, if we can, I will make sure we get to is if you're okay with it, is how can I deal with my own imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I love that one.
Okay, because that's me every day.
Yes, yes. And I hope do you have some things you might want to say on that?
No, I don't.
Okay. I love that question too. And something, yes, I have thought a lot about. And happy to just bring also personal experience on this. I think if anything, the research just shows that if you feel that way, you're likely not alone, and that your experience in the workplace also is real. But I think we can also talk about strategies that we've developed as individuals on that too, which will be helpful.
So the only one that I would have, I think I could add any value to or comment on is the one about the subtle microaggressions and not enough to go to HR, because I have a couple of really perfect examples of how that played out with me in my career and how I handled it.
Excellent. Well, that's good. And we have that teed up early in the conversation. That's great. The one that I won't have a lot, I mean, I can speak to it, but I won't have a lot to say about it, is the one about compensation disparities.
Okay.
Just because I'm happy to mention it. We don't address it in the research. But the one thing I can say is that the research does dispel some myths. So for example, there's no aspiration gap between women and men. Women and men are equally excited about career and hungry for career advancement, for example. So there are like a few things, but we don't look at the pay disparities or pay at all in what the companies share with us.
Okay. I'm trying to get this a little bit. Yeah.
And Gail, if you get a chance, when you open up the conversation, can you just allude to the fact that we appreciate all the questions submitted, and 2, it's more than we will be able to get to, just acknowledging that, but that the questions that we do get to, we saw there was overwhelming interest in these questions, that kind of thing.
Got it.
Because there were a lot of questions submitted.
Really? Wow, that's cool. Maybe we can take them and I'm not committing to follow up on all of them, but maybe if there are a couple of key ones, we can actually incorporate them into things we may discuss in the future.
Yes.
I love that. I mean, and that's a nice tie-in, you know, for just how you can use this potentially to build the community and the discussion around women in philanthropy. You know, we had talked about that, but there could be lots of opportunities to continue the dialogue. And, you know, people can also, yeah, read more, keep the questions coming, and there'll be a whole new version of it in a couple months too.
Thank y'all so much.
Gonna be fun.
BJ, will we be able to see how many people are watching? Like, will it show in participants?
It'll show, yeah, it should show in participants, and you're a panelist, so you should be able to see it. If not, I'll see.
Okay, cool. I'm just interested to see.
See right now, do you see 6?
I do. I see 6
You should
of
see.
us. Yeah.
Now, do we need to log out of this panelist one and go to another one, or this is where we're staying?
We are good. I just need to click start. When you guys are ready, we can click start. We'll be live, so we don't want to do any more talking after that until you get my cue. But that's up to you. We're ready to go.
Well, I wanted to turn my camera off, right? So that to ensure that I'm not seen. And then the second question, just confirming we are recording this, because I've had many emails over the past couple of days saying all of a sudden I can't make it, but I want to make sure I see the webinar. Okay.
So one of my notes here is that it's not saying that we're recording, but we're in practice. That's probably why. So I'll make sure right away. That's the first thing I'm going to check to make sure it is recording there. And then I will give you a copy of it, trim all this off, and give you a copy of Vimeo like normal.
Great. Thanks, y'all. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you guys are ready, I'll make the switch.
Did we keep our cameras on and stay, or should we mute and cameras off until we start? Or
I
doesn't
would
matter?
mute whether you keep the camera. Probably turn the camera off. That would look a little weird if you're just sitting there. And then mute. And then Gail, you're going first. So as soon as you hear from, you'll be seeing. Well, I'll chat to everybody. All of us here. I'll chat the countdown for it. So, all right. If we're good, I will shut my camera off too. And Mike.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gail Lanier, and I serve as the current chair of Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy. On behalf of our group, I'd like to welcome you to today's seminar. It's a very special one on women in the workplace, and we're very fortunate today to be led by Nora Gardner, one of our own, a 1994 alum. I'll tell you a little bit more about Nora in a minute, but first let me share a bit about Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy. So you may not know, but NC State have had women on its staff since the 1880s. And Lucille Thompson was the first woman full-time student in 1921. I know you've seen all the reports in the last couple of years. Female students have outnumbered males in our incoming freshman class. So things are really changing. Reflecting on this change and the involvement of women at NC State, Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy was actually launched in 2020 to see how we could become more involved. Our tagline will give you a little bit of insight into what we focus on: impactful giving, meaningful engagement, influential leadership, amazing learning. We have the opportunity to connect women across different disciplines, different generations, different professions, and different backgrounds so that they can come together, as well as come and learn different aspects of what's going on at NC State. We help these women find areas in which they can have a positive influence so that they can give back of their time, their talents, their ties, their testimonies, and their treasures. We also advocate for greater diversity across the university's leadership boards. We shine a light on women's accomplishments, provide educational programs on ways to give financially to the university and why that's important. We link women to the numerous volunteer opportunities there are at NC State, whether there may be Day of Giving, Pack Appreciation Day, or Red and White Week. We also collaborate with a lot of other organizations focused on women across the university. Wolfpack Women Strengthening the Pack is an organization that's focused on NC State student athletes. We collaborate with them. As well, we collaborate with the Alumni Association to host exciting educational events like the one that we're holding here today. We are so excited to have Nora Gardner with us today. As you can see, the response for this session has been overwhelming. So discussing the challenges and opportunities of women in the workplace is certainly a very popular topic. Nora serves as the managing partner of McKinsey's Washington, D.C. office, specializing in organizational change and talent management. She supports various industries, whether they be public, private, or social sectors, and focuses on areas of healthcare, pharmaceuticals, scientific agencies, and defense. And she brings a wealth of knowledge with her. Nora holds a PhD in biochemistry from Duke University, as well as a BS in biochemistry from NC State. And she brings this unique blend of scientific rigor and organizational expertise to her work. Her work has also been recognized outside of the industry. In 2015, Nora was named Working Mother of the Year by Working Mother magazine. She was named among Consulting Magazine's top 25 consultants in 2021 in the Excellence in Public Sector category. And she also helps NC State out tremendously. Last fall, Nora was honored by the College of Sciences as their Distinguished Alumna of the Year. She also serves on that college's foundation board and has since 2019. And she and her husband, Matthew, have established 2 endowments to benefit the university students: the Gardner Kirtland Family Extraordinary Opportunity Scholarship Fund and the Gardner Kirtland Family Caldwell Fellows Program Endowment. What wonderful accomplishments. Nora, who also was a Caldwell Scholar and a Caldwell Fellow and University Scholar here. She's a role model in leadership, not only in her profession, as well as in philanthropy and service. Please join me in welcoming Nora Gardner to share insight from McKinsey & Company's latest Women in the Workplace report. It's the latest comprehensive study of the state of women in corporate America. Nora, I'll turn it over to you.
Dale, thank you so much for that warm welcome. Much appreciated. And it's so wonderful to spend some time with Wolfpack women on a topic that really matters to me. I'd like to thank everyone who's joining us and also appreciate your patience. I know we had to reschedule this. And I am just so grateful for the support of my Wolfpack family in rescheduling it. And the time is here. So I'm really excited to share some of this research with you and to engage in a conversation based on questions that we've received about the research. Let me start to share my screen. Hopefully you all can see that. So this is what I'm going to share with you is the current results from McKinsey's Women in the Workplace study. As Gail mentioned, I lead McKinsey's Washington, D.C. office. I've been a part of this research primarily through encouraging the inclusion of public and social sector organizations in the research. And we've been doing it now for 8 years. And, you know, it's been very, very helpful. That's given us the ability to really understand what women's experiences are in the workplace, what they value, and also, you know, so that we can see what's working and monitor progress over time. You're seeing here just a little bit about the research program itself. So this is a joint collaboration between McKinsey and leanin.org. We're now in our 8th year. The data that I'll share with you today is based on the participation of over 300 companies and organizations. These are US and Canada based. They are primarily companies and organizations that are medium and large size, so around above 1,000 employees. And collectively, they employ more than 12 million people. We talk about this research as the largest of its kind, and we'll get into the primary data. We look at both the pipeline of women and their progress from entry level up to the C-suite, but we also really try to bring to life and bring data to the experiences of women and men, and that's through an attitudinal survey. And this year's report was based on more than 40,000 survey participants. And of course, we supplement that with interviews to really get a sense for those experiences and what's happening. So let me dive in a little bit to what we have been finding over the years and found this latest time. We identified 2 major pipeline challenges that companies and organizations are facing with respect to women's experiences. And those are first, the so-called broken rung, which I'll explain to you, which is about that first promotion to manager. And then this year, we saw women actually departing companies. We called this the great breakup. So we did see women after several years of saying they were considering leaving, actually moving on this year. And we'll talk about to the extent to which that is happening and why. And then I also have some information later on about what's changed in the remote and hybrid experience of women. But let's get to these 2 pipeline challenges first. Just to orient you to the view that you're seeing here. So when we work with and when companies participate, they share 2 types of data with us. The first is we get a sense for their pipeline and the proportion of women and men of color from entry level all the way up to the C-suite. And we've now actually added data on board representation as well. And then companies also share with us their policies and procedures and offerings with respect to women and men and employees. And then we have that survey data. But this is a view of the pipeline. So on the left, you're seeing entry level for our overall company data set. And over to the right, you're seeing the more senior positions, C-suite and board. And I mentioned that we're in our 8th year. What's nice about that is we also can monitor whether there's slow, steady, or backsliding in terms of progress for women's representation. And I'm pleased to show and say that at entry level on the left, you'll see that women have nearly achieved parity in terms of representation. So, you know, at just under 50%, which is terrific. And there is also bright spot and inspiration when it comes to the C-suite, where we're now at about a quarter or just over a quarter of C-suite representatives being women. And while that is really great news, there's not been, it's been slow progress over the years. So you see that change has been up maybe 5% over the course of the work that we've been doing. And as I mentioned, there are still some challenges. So in particular, that first promotion to manager, we see, while we were at almost parity at entry level, we're only at 40% women at that first promotion to manager. And we see challenges at every step of the way for women of color in terms of representation, with only 5% representation at the C-suite. And then, we have this, if you go into and look at the entire report, we have pipelines like this for different industries and sectors, say healthcare or retail or automotive. And another observation is just that women remain deeply underrepresented in technical roles. And the reason I point that out, and it may be of interest for this audience as well, is that those so-called STEM jobs and technical roles and jobs are fast growing and highly paid and highly compensated roles. So it's something that we really try to keep an eye on with the research. Now, as I mentioned, we've been following this story of the experience of women and over time. And pre-pandemic, the number one thing that women said they wanted was flexibility. We'll come back to that. And during the pandemic, so 2020, 2021, 2022, we saw women saying that they were considering leaving because of the challenges around burnout and their development. And we're sad to say that in this year's report, we actually saw what we're calling the Great Breakup. So we saw women reporting leaving, so this is voluntary attrition, at higher rates than we have seen in the past, and at higher rates than men. So you see here the difference between 9% and 10.5% in terms of attrition for women. And again, this, this both increase and then increase with respect to men is new news and different this year. And that may not seem like a lot, 1.5% difference. But if you look at the right side of this chart to bring it to life, for every woman director who is promoted to the next level in a company, 2 women directors would choose to leave that company. So this is a real wake-up call in terms of maintaining that inspirational pipeline at the top, which is so important for all women and for entry-level women. And of course, it's also very important, as we'll see, women and senior women tend to be investing in sponsoring others, in doing DEI work, and being allies within the workplace as well. So, we're really concerned about this. I just want to take a moment to share with you the broken rung. So the broken rung, as I mentioned, is that first promotion to manager. So we're at parity, women and men at entry level, but what happens at that first opportunity for promotion? For every 100 men who are promoted to manager, only 87 women are promoted, and it's even lower, 82% for women of color. And this has been something that we noted from the beginning of the research, and it's really has not, it's been difficult to budge. And we can talk about what companies are doing in terms of debiasing, but we see, strength in debiasing recruitment and entry-level recruitment, but this would indicate maybe less so with respect to promotion and those policies. And this is despite the fact that we do not see any aspiration gap between women and men. So women and men are equally excited to be promoted. They're equally excited to become senior leaders in their companies. So I'm going to now spend a little bit of time on women's experiences. And as I mentioned, this is based on the survey data. So we survey employees of these companies, women and men, to understand what their experiences are like at work and at home. And what I mentioned is, we're seeing the sort of great breakup, right? So we actually are seeing some women choosing to leave their companies. In particular, we see senior women, and by senior, I mean very senior in their careers, leaving their companies. And why is that? So when we looked at the data to try to understand the drivers of the great breakup, we saw really three things being identified. As I mentioned, there's no aspiration gap. Women do want to advance, but they face stronger headwinds. We'll go into detail on this a little more, but so-called microaggressions are real, and all employees experience them in some way, shape, or form, but we see them more pronounced for women. If you've ever had the experience of having a coworker get credit for your idea or be mistaken for someone more junior, these are more likely to happen for women, more likely to happen for women of color, and also more likely to happen for senior women. We also see that women leaders are overworked at work and at home, the so-called double shift, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And that while that work that they are doing at home and at work, be that investing in the careers of others, sponsoring others, doing the DEI work that we all know is important and needed, they feel that they're being under-recognized for that, and they are in fact being under-recognized for that in performance reviews. We do see burnout among both women and men, but increasingly so among women, 43% reporting that they're burned out. And women are honestly seeking a different culture at work. So we'll talk about what women are seeking. In many cases, it has been flexibility, loud and clear. And while the opportunity for some virtual and remote work has been providing some flexibility for some, there can be challenges with that around always on culture and challenges around managing and leading in those environments. So a lot going on for women and women leaders, and this explains why we do see many of them moving to see what they hope to see, which is a more inspiring work environment where they're getting credit. Just a little more on this so-called double shift or double shift. So this is data on in dual career heterosexual partnerships, whether women or men report that they're responsible for most or all of the housework or the work at home. We have seen for many years that women take on the lion's share of the work at home. Here, you're seeing that is no different. Reported, but entry level, we see women 60% of women reporting versus 30% of men that they are primarily responsible for the work at home. What's interesting about this data here that we're seeing is that actually that differential, that disparity increases as women get more senior in their careers. So when you're looking at senior leaders, so senior managers and up, those women are more than 4 times as likely as men at those same levels to be carrying out most of the responsibilities at home. And so this really tends to add up for women leaders. Another group of employees that we shined a light on with this report was younger women. And what we found in terms of the perspectives of younger women, in this case, these are under 30, so employees under 30, is that those things that they found important mirrored those were important for our leaders. So the opportunity to advance, flexibility, the commitment to DEI and to well-being, but we're even more so and more stark. And in particular, I would call out both the opportunity to advance and flexibility as things that were extremely important to younger women in our survey. All right, this is the data on so-called microaggressions or experience at work. So what you're seeing here is survey respondents, and whether they be women or men, and also whether they are women with different identities. And we're surveying whether they are experiencing these behaviors at work. And at the top of this page, you're seeing so-called microaggressions around challenges to competence or othering comments. And then at the bottom, some of the factors around psychological safety and reported psychological safety. So one thing that's important, and when you look at this, you see that, men do experience microaggressions as well, but to a lesser extent. And I think the thing that really, really jumps out, and we want to emphasize with this, is that when you look at women in particular with different identities and the intersectionality, you start to really see some challenges that, and bring to light some of the challenges that women of different identities are facing. So just to highlight a few, and they're here in the boxes, women with disabilities and LGBTQ+ women are experiencing at increased rates those othering comments and challenges to their competence. And Latinas and Black women in particular experiencing microaggressions around not feeling psychologically safe at work. We've also got additional data on experience here, and this is about the level of support that colleagues are feeling, either from their managers or in the form of sponsorship and allyship. And here, as you see, women of color in particular, not having as good an experience in terms of feeling support from their managers and sponsorship and allyship. And this is super important. In the past, we can talk about it in the discussion, the concepts of sponsorship and allyship, but sponsorship and allyship really work. So when we ask women whether or not they have sponsors and allies, and then look at their patterns of experience on microaggressions, women who have sponsors and allies actually experience fewer negative microaggressions. So sponsorship and allyship really does work. And we also see women often stepping up to be sponsors and allies. All right, just a little more. I want to share some of our findings on the future of work, and in particular, kind of what we've all been experiencing with the some opportunities to add flexibility, and in some cases to work in virtual and hybrid forms, but also some of the challenges and pressures that come with that. So flexibility is hugely important. And as I mentioned, it's been, for the 8 years we've been doing this, the number one thing that women have said they have wanted in order to make their whole lives work. And flexibility is here to stay. So we see over 80% of employees want flexible work options, and over 80% of companies plan to keep or expand on flexible work options where they're possible. I think this is really important. It's also important to note that it's not a silver bullet. So not all roles, not all industries, essential workers, those in manufacturing, not all of those are able to be done remotely. And we also are seeing, while those who are working remotely may in fact experience fewer microaggressions, they may also not be getting the opportunities for advancement and connection that are important in a career. And I'll show you some data about how leading and managing in a flexible and remote environment is actually more challenging. Expectations are high, and companies are not always giving those managers the training that they need to thrive. So as I mentioned, this is just data showing that microaggressions are actually slightly less prevalent in a work from home and hybrid environment. But, having said that, as I said, this is not a substitute for creating an inclusive environment on the work site at work. And then with respect to offering flexibility and remote work, we found when we looked at employee preferences here that it wasn't just about having those options. It was actually most important that employees had some amount of choice in their work arrangement. So you're seeing here on the left-hand side, women who worked in places where they had some element of choice in the flexibility that they took advantage of, were more likely to be happy with their jobs, feel they have great opportunities, less likely to leave, and less likely to feel burned out. Managers, who we know are just absolutely important, they're the most important thing in terms of retention of colleagues and employers, are absolutely important, but they need their own level of support to do what's required, particularly in new environments. So we see when managers do invest and take actions to support their employees, those employees are 38% less likely to leave. But we see sky-high expectations. So nearly 80% of companies expect managers to support well-being and to be, the major face of how well-being is supported. This data just shows those high expectations of people managers around career development, around inclusion on their teams, and around supporting employee well-being. So we see, 60 to 80% of employees expecting these types of actions from their managers. And then, they're not always seeing those expectations being met. And having said that, you'll see on the bottom of this page, we don't see that companies are really providing the necessary training and support to those managers themselves on how to make sure that they are promoting an inclusive environment and how to manage and lead in a hybrid environment. So a real opportunity there. But as I mentioned, when those actions are taken, they're worth taking because we do see those employees happier with their job, less likely to be burned out, and less likely to leave. All right, I want to wrap up with a little bit of solutions, what works. The other thing that's very nice about the data and the data set is we are able to understand best practices around what companies as well as individual leaders are doing. But when we look at company actions, we're really starting to see a set of actions which we would call just table stakes. So now we're seeing, the majority of companies and employees are just expecting that companies will be taking a look at unconscious bias, offering a full set of benefits, including, total mental health and well-being, providing career development support in the form of mentorship and sponsorship, and tracking DEI data. But what we're starting to try to put out and offer is those leading companies, so those who are increasing their representation and leading the way, what are those things that they are doing? So we offer some of these practices that are leading and next horizon. So, really leaning into training those managers, as I described, tracking outcomes, particularly in the remote and hybrid environment, linking progress on diversity to performance incentives, and debiasing their processes. So these are some of the things that we see many companies doing, but then also those who are really leading the way. And then, so here are a summary of some of those actions that if you're in a position in a company or an organization that we would recommend. So tracking, looking at the data, and you can do so by, participating in studies like this that are free of charge, but also just doing that internally. We really recommend tracking those metrics and sharing them. Creating a culture of value and accountability around investing in DEI. We know it's important, we know it works, and we know that companies that are doing this are higher performing. Redefining and communicating around hybrid work environments, if you're able to take advantage of those, and helping managers lead in those situations. Over communication is absolutely critical. And there are actually tools and techniques to creating an inclusive team environment. And we want to make sure that, managers have that training and also have resources and those to go to when they need it. And then it's very, very important to support the whole employee. We talked a little about intersectionality, but also mental well-being and preventing burnout, which is absolutely critical as an employer. And then just a few actions that leaders and individuals can take. I mean, many of you, I'm sure, have your own experience at work, and all of us are both mentors and mentees, right? So what can we each do to reflect on those who we are supporting, either as mentors or sponsors, and those who support each of us, and being much more intentional about the two-way street of that, offering it and asking for it. There's so much that we can each do around interrupting bias and celebrating women's accomplishments. And this is a place where, of course, it's helpful, and anyone should lower the barrier to call it when they see bias or a microaggression. But it's so helpful to have an ally step in and challenge the likability penalty and notice what's happening and have others notice. I'm also a big fan. There are microaggressions, but I'm a big fan of also the micro boosts that we can all give one another by making others' accomplishments visible, touting their accomplishments, and making sure that colleagues, but in particular women colleagues, are recognized. And you can do that in small ways as well. This also doesn't mean that you should shy away from giving direct feedback to one another and asking for direct feedback. We actually see that women often receive less constructive feedback, and it can be vague. So, another thing we can do is actually to be honest and helpful with one another, and then make sure everyone's ideas are heard. So we're going to go into discussion in a moment, but before we do, I want to make sure that you have this link, www.womenintheworkplace.com. At that link, you can download the full report, and the next iteration of the report is actually due out later this fall at that same website. So in the October-November timeframe, we'll have a refresh set of data and insights. And then I've got one more link for you there, just with additional information and insights. So I hope that gives us some things to chew on and discuss.
Okay, so I'm going to join Nora back, and we're going to go through a couple questions here with some of the time that we have left. First, we want to thank you all for the pre-submitted questions, and any that you may have put into the chat. We'll tell you we had a lot of pre-submitted questions, so we tried to take those that were the most popular, and we'll try to go through some of those. So thank you again. We will review all of the questions that will be submitted or have been submitted prior to this, and we'll actually use those for future sessions. So we really do appreciate and thank you for that effort. So I'm going to go through a couple of these questions. Nora, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it, Gail.
All right. So you talked a lot about microaggressions, and you had some great charts that talked about things that both employees and individuals and companies can do. You also mentioned mentorship and sponsorships in that same vein, including a list of top 10 ideas. Can you speak a little bit more to that so that people have a better idea of what that really means?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me spend a little bit of time on mentorship and sponsorship. Both are super, super important. Actually, I'm going to talk about three ships: mentorship, sponsorship, and allyship. All are very, very important, but they're really different. And it's important for all of us to understand the difference between them so that we know what to offer and what to ask for as individuals and, of course, as leaders. So mentorship, is offering really fantastic advice. And you actually cannot have too many mentors. These are often people you look up to. They can be people who are similar to you, and you really identify with. They also could be people who are really different than you on purpose. And they don't necessarily need to be up in the hierarchy. So, think about reverse mentoring. What could you learn from someone who's in a different generation from you? So that's mentorship. And like I said, you can't have too many. It's also, though, really important. People love to be mentors, but to get the most out of your mentorship relationships, it's really good to be a good protege. One of my mentors taught me that. If you want to have great mentors, be a good protege. And what do I mean by that? It's on you to check in, ask the questions, and really soak up that advice. That's mentorship. And you can have unlimited. Sponsorship is distinct in that these are really individuals who are not just able to give you guidance, but are actually able to open doors for you. They are the ones who will make the introduction, take you to the meeting, and by the way, give you a chance to fail in the meeting and tell you afterwards what you might have learned, or ask you what you might have learned. So sponsors are really, it's a different level of support, and they are jointly committed to your success and able to offer something to you and for you. What that means is that you will have, by definition, fewer of those, and they need to be people who are in a position to be helpful, and they need to know that you want them to sponsor you. So it's really important, and you really are only going to have 3, 4, 5 sponsors. And as a sponsor, you can really only sponsor 3, 4, 5 sponsorees, because if you're really invested in someone's success, there's really a limited number of that, right? Again, really important to understand that, and so know what you want, know who you're looking for, use those terms when you talk to them. And, you know, companies and organizations are starting to put some formality around this, which is super helpful. Women, by the way, tend to be sometimes very well mentored, often under-sponsored relative to their male counterparts. So that's also important to keep in mind. And then finally, allyship. I just wanted to mention it because it's such a powerful idea, and it's very important, particularly for identities where you might feel like an only. So, you know, you have intersectionality going on. We also, you know, we had some questions about identities where you really are the only one in a population, or the only one in the room, or the only one, or at least you feel that way. You know, it is often the numbers are small, and you look around and you are the only. So what can organizations, companies do, and what can we do for one another that really helps in those situations? And it's allyship. So, by allyship, you know, I mean that you are investing in paying attention to and helping to develop and promote others, and maybe those who are very different than you. And it's an extremely powerful concept and idea. And we see companies doing actual formal allyship programs, formal allyship training. You know, I see male allies sometimes leading women's initiatives. In our company, we had a formal allyship group for our Black employees. You know, that was for non-Black, so non-members of the affinity group who wanted to be allies. So it's just an extremely powerful idea, and something that we can all do.
That's great. And, you know, I'll just add that sometimes you may have sponsors and you may not even know that they're sponsoring.
Yes.
And
yes.
so that's great as well. So thank you. Okay. So the next one here is an audience member asked, how can you handle microaggressions in the workplace, especially if you are the only woman in the room? Kind of building on what you were just saying. The microaggression is not overt enough to take to HR, and I'd rather just handle the things myself. I don't want to isolate myself further by making others uncomfortable, but have always struggled to address the issue. I want to leave the workplace better than when I entered it for women coming after me.
Yeah. What an inspiring question. Yeah. You know, so many of us have experienced this. And it's one of the things that I think is probably the most powerful thing about this research, is that it actually puts numbers and brings that experience, shines a light on those experiences. So, you know, one thing is just to know and understand that you're not crazy, you're not alone. It is happening. It's for real. There's a few things you can do if you are an only or the only. So one is more institutional. We see some companies actually appointing and agreeing to have someone in the meeting act as a bias observer. This can have, particularly in decisional meetings, this can be helpful. And that takes the pressure off of any individual person or only to call it out. And in fact, you know, so then it's someone else's job to call it out if it happens. And then everyone in the room is also given permission that it's okay to call these things out. So that's a thing you can do ahead of time, and is very helpful, particularly in those very consequential moments. The other things that I think really work are allyship, like I just mentioned. So it's often much more powerful when called out by someone else as opposed to the only. And I love the counterpoint examples, those so-called micro boosts, right? Where you're actually, hey, did you hear, you know, Gail's idea? Or to build on Gail's idea, this is what I think we should do. So those things can be helpful as well. It's really challenging, but it's super important. I guess just one other thing on the construction. So this is also why we've talked about this in the research, this phenomenon of being an only, and it's really challenging. And when we look at companies that are higher performing and they are more diverse, they actually try to avoid onlys to the point where they might actually set up teams such that you don't just spread out your 10% women so that there's 1 in 10 on every team, but you cluster them, because we actually find that women are more comfortable and higher performing when they don't have that extra pressure of being an only. So it's good to try to avoid the only. Did you have thoughts on this one, Gail?
You know, it was so interesting because early in my career, being a woman, being an engineer, being a person of color, you know,
You've never been an only, have you?
I've been an only like every meeting that I went to. I remember early in one of my first promotions, you know, I go into this meeting, all these men, and someone asked, "Hey, Gail, can you take the minutes for the meeting?" It's very subtle, right? The first time I said, "Yeah, okay, sure, no problem." The next meeting, I was asked again if I would take the minutes. And my response was, I took them the last time. You know, maybe if somebody else can take them, or if you really want them, I'll be more than happy to go get your assistant.
Yes.
Go take them. So, you know, it's a deflection, but
yes.
it's kind of the way you handle it. You have to nip it in the bud. You can't let that fester and continue on. And it's the way that you handle it. For me, I'm always good at a smile, but boy, with the things that I can say with that smile,
there you go,
are very interesting. So for me, that was the way I kind of handled that situation.
I love that example. Yeah. And also, you know, you did it once, you took the turn and did it once, but like, that's enough. Yeah. Now it's someone else's turn. Yeah.
I'm an equal player. I'll do it one time, but that's it. Right?
Yeah, it's a great story. Thanks.
All right. So this one is very near and dear to my heart. It says, how can I deal with my own imposter syndrome?
Oh, yeah. This, yes, this is something I've thought so much about. It is in some ways very common. Many of us feel this, and it one thing to recognize is that it's a limiting mindset. It holds us back. Therefore, you know, it's worth becoming self-aware about and working to address it. One of my own personal techniques, which I'll share, I call it WWMD, which is stands for either what would a man do or what would Matt do, who's my husband, Matt Kirtland, who was mentioned in the intro. And, you know, I have a real internal dialogue, you know, that's sort of a self-critic, and you take things personally, and maybe I don't belong here, and maybe I should leave. And that voice sits on one shoulder. And then I put the WWMD voice on the other shoulder. And the WWMD voice would be, what are they talking about? They're crazy. You got this. You're crushing it. You know, and so I actually do that very intentionally to give myself an internal dialogue that's counterbalanced, and I tap into and draw on that pep talk that when I need it, right? Because you can get yourself into a real downward spiral, and when you're inward focused, as I mentioned, you're not going to be able to shine and be your best self and perform. So you got to come up with ways to you know, to internally tap into that and kind of get out of your own head about it. The other thing that's really powerful is to speak to others about this. And you want to, of course, you need to do that in a safe space and where you feel comfortable. Those mentorship and allyship relationships are great places to do this. And it's something that's important for us all to keep in mind as we act as allies, mentors, and sponsors to others, sharing a little bit of vulnerability about each of our own paths, you know, internal dialogues, what we've been thinking about, really actually, opens things up in a way that can be very helpful. So those are some of the things I think about and do.
I'm going to try to get a couple more questions in here.
Sure.
It says, another audience member noted that as a senior leader, senior level woman in biotech pharmaceuticals who is transgender, she has experienced repeated discrimination. What do you see companies doing to better understand the transgender and non-binary community and in educating people leaders in their organization? This woman's community is so small. Her experience has been that companies would rather just deal with the legal fallout rather than implement systemic education and training.
Yeah. Again, just a heartbreaking question, right, to receive. And this is sort of a real example of the intersectionality. And when you saw that, the data on microaggressions, the person asking this question is dealing with this, in the course of work all the time. And so a few things that can be done. Leading companies, as I mentioned, are really paying attention to the benefits that they offer. And this is really, really important. So one thing would be to, ensure that those are equal, leading, and compelling, number one. The second is around that training. It's training and de-biasing, right, of processes, including onboarding and promotions, but also for managers and all colleagues. The thing that I think is probably one of the things that is the most powerful. So we talk a lot about unconscious bias training, which is super, super important, right? It's a way to kind of check when these things are happening and to counteract them. Another thing that's really powerful is what we would call conscious inclusion training. So what are the things that managers can do, all colleagues can do to ensure that every colleague feels safe to be their full selves and to bring their full strength to the team and the work that they're doing. And there's actual behaviors around that. It's inclusive language. It's understanding and using proper pronouns. It's asking for everyone to speak up, and those who you haven't heard of. It's allowing one another to call each other out when you see bias or or things could be more inclusive. It's getting more feedback, right? And there's just a set of actions that we see forward-leaning companies really committing to around conscious inclusion in all of its form. And that allows, of course, some of these specific things that would be really important for our transgender colleagues, but, can include things that make all colleagues feel comfortable, safe, and able to perform at their best.
Okay. I'm gonna try to sneak another one in. Okay.
Let's do it.
Have you seen any data indicating that the return of the office has been a positive impact on employee engagement, and specifically around mental health? Because there seems to be such a big focus right now on mental health and the issues that we've seen coming out of COVID, and particularly as it relates to women. Yeah.
This is a really rich area because it's a little bit of a paradox. Right. So, and I alluded to this a little bit in the data that I shared. So, flexibility is super important, and people really, women have wanted that for years and really value it. Remote and hybrid environments, as I shared, also can be more comfortable, right? So you see fewer microaggressions, for example. They can be very, they can be inclusive if intentionally, so you have all the Zoom boxes and everyone can participate and the introverts can be on the chat, and that's all great. They can also, though, exacerbate differences and highlight differences. And now that there's sort of this world with return, et cetera, you know, we also see in some environments opportunities going to those who are in person. So it's a real and then in terms of mental health and burnout, we actually saw, I would call it a burnout and mental health crisis during the pandemic, with the shift to remote work and always on. And that is often, I think, because of the lack of guardrails given and the internal drive that was and the all the time connectivity that really led to just, you know, incredible amounts of burnout. The other thing is when colleagues are on their own and working remotely, they can be very isolated. And, you know, you find people slipping through the cracks. You find people slipping into substance abuse issues, and, you know, and being very isolated. So it's a real challenge, and there are both opportunities as well as real challenges to remote virtual. You saw in the data, burnout is absolutely real and is more pronounced for women and has been throughout our survey. It's more pronounced for actually women leaders and women of color. And, you know, that's again been consistent, but we see high burnout with men as well. And so I think it's, you know, I think it's on all of us. The other thing is, you know, you do see that when managers do check in on their employees, provide support to them, help them manage their workload, those employees are happier, more likely to stay, et cetera. So I think, you know, that's really the key to it. But it's easier said than done.
All right, we've got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to give you one quick question and I need a quick response. So what was the most surprising thing that you found in this report?
Oh, wow. The most surprising thing for me, this report was the great breakup, that women were actually departing. And, you know, we're looking at labor participation. The participation rates are up, so they're changing jobs. They're not leaving entirely. That surprised me. But I hope that they are that women are getting what they want and need in their whole lives and in their careers.
Well, great. So, Nora, I want to thank you again for participating with us today, engaging with, we had over 250 women who are people participating today. So thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity to have some time to talk with you and go through this report. We will make this webinar available online for everyone afterwards. And again, I just want to thank everyone. It's great to talk to NC State alums, and we'll look forward to the next opportunity. Go Pack.
Thank you, Gail.